Let's go back a little. I would love to know what your very first job was.
My very a voiceover or anything.
You know what? Let's start with your very first job, not voiceover.
I used to do stuff like lemonade stands and washing cars, mowing lawns. But my very first real job was sorting comic books in my grandfather's bookstore. He had this beautiful bookstore. Yay, comic book band! My grandfather had this beautiful 3-story bookstore where they have those wooden ladders that slide, and it was one of these old, really cool collector's books, mostly collector's books. And he would buy stuff from auctions and from estate sales. And one of my jobs was to sort through the comic books that would come in. And my uncle ran the comic book department. My uncle was this crazy hippie dude, had hair down to here and smoked pot. This is back in the 60s. And so my very first job was in summer, being up in the attic above the Chinese food store, smelling all the fumes and the trash coming up from the alley, sorting through thousands and thousands of comics that he would buy. And being a 12-year-old kid, there were always Playboys and things in the boxes with the comic books. So I spent a lot of extra time up there. Learning about life.
You spent a lot of time sorting things out.
I did. I got a lot sorted in those years. So that was the first job, and I worked 8 to 10-hour days for like $10. And then the first voice job was a show called The Guyver. It was an anime series. You know The Guyver? Yeah, and that was kind of an accident. I was working in I was a terrible musician during the 80s, playing in a funk band, opening for hair bands and heavy metal acts, getting cheeseburgers thrown at us. They hated us. But to support that, I got a job in a mailroom at a film company called Empire Entertainment. We made Ghoulies and From Beyond and Reanimator, a lot of those movies. So my job was in the mailroom, and the head of the mailroom, a guy named Victor Garcia, was casting for a Japanimation program, and asked me if I would come in on the weekend to audition for this thing. And I said, oh, I'm not an actor, I don't know how to do this stuff. And he goes, well, I'll give you free food. And I said, okay. As a starving musician, so I came in and they showed me images of a creature called a zoonoid ripping the arm off of another creature and beating him with it. And I had to match the movements of the creature on screen for anime. It was originally done in Japanese. And so I go up to the microphone and I'm watching all these other great actors do their thing, and I'm terrified. I'm starting to sweat and I'm thinking, oh man, now I gotta work for the free food. And
who else was in that session?
Oh man, there were so many people from the anime community. Jonathan Fahn, Tom Fahn, Victor Garcia, who was a voice actor at the time. Oh man, I'm trying to think of who else was there. Leah Sargent, I believe, was there.
So you were thrown into the deep end.
Oh, big time. Yeah, these guys were working voice actors. Mona Marshall, I think, was there. So I'm watching all these people audition, and it's my turn to get up to the microphone. They said, all right, so I had the deepest voice in the mailroom, so that's the only reason I was there also. And they needed somebody that could do creatures. And they showed me this footage of the creature ripping the arm off and beating the other one with it. And they go, okay, well, what would that sound like? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe like... Is that okay? And then they went, you're hired. I went, what? Now I gotta work? Oh no. And then I really got scared. But it worked out. It was just sort of a natural transition from music for me, because language and movement is a musical thing. And I could hit all the beats and movements of that based on my musical training, and it just made sense in my weird brain. And then they gave me the lead bad guy in the show. I did 26 episodes of that. And then they just kept hiring me for...
So it instantly turned into a career?
It didn't really, because it paid crap. It was terrible. It still
But more than music?
No. Well, yes. Yes, because I was the only one with a day job and the only one with a truck. Music paid nothing, and it was all pay to play back then. So I spent $30,000 to be able to play music. This, at least I made $50 here, $50 there, and free food. So that was pretty good.
At what point did it seem like a career?
Age 40. It was, honestly, it was about 13, maybe 15 years later. I booked the voice of 7-Eleven. I was that guy who said, oh, thank heaven. I don't know if you guys know that. And I thought, okay, this is my big break. I can buy a house and a boat. And I thought, people who do commercials make big, big money, which They did if you got a big campaign. But 7-Eleven was really clever, and they would show it regionally, or they would show it on cable only. And so I'd get a check for like $400 2 or 3 times a year, and you can't really live on that. Plus, right after I booked it, I quit my job after being at this company for 15 years. I stayed at that same film company. I was an executive at the company by this time. I quit my job, and then the union went on strike, and I was out of work for a year and a half, and living on credit cards for 3 years, and having 3 other jobs to support my voiceover habit. So it wasn't anything that supported me financially. I didn't see it as a career. I just thought it was the thing that made me happy when everything else sucked.
Well, it's interesting you describe it as a habit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a job now. Now it's my career, thank God. But it was, I mean, I had done so many awful career choices earlier on, or things that just didn't make me happy. The music industry was terrible. The film industry was awful. And most of the jobs I had were just a grind. But when I went to do voiceover, even though it's very difficult work and very difficult to get into, it's the thing that made me really happy. And I love the community of voice actors too. We all support each other instead of tear each other down.
Except for that one guy.
Except for that one guy, Vic Mignogna. No, I'm kidding.
You said it, I didn't prompt
I'm
anything.
kidding. I didn't say that. Who was that? That was another voice in my head.
So at what point then did it actually transition? This is fully it, this is what I'm doing, I'm making enough to support myself.
What time is it? About 4 o'clock this afternoon?
What you're saying is head out of the table and see him after this.
No, it became self-sustaining probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. And I was still doing plenty of other things. I was writing and doing other things to support that too, but to actually make a living off of it, in truth, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, something like that.
Is there any point where you thought you would walk away from it?
No, because I was doing it for free for so long, or for such little money. Like I was saying, it's the thing that made me happy, and I always tell people who are looking to get into voiceover to do it because you love to do it, and hopefully the money will follow, and if it doesn't, you're still doing something that you love to do. So I'll never walk away from it, even if I have a couple bad years, and they still happen, so.
And so then, which role would you say has most defined you to this point?
Ooh, that's tough. I would say overall, Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. You know my shows. Oh my God, you guys watch my shows. Yeah, Spike changed my life in so many different ways. I learned how to act in the course of recording that show. I was faking it until then. And I couldn't fake it anymore. Once we did the Cowboy Bebop movie, I had to actually, especially in the scene with Spike and Elektra, I don't know if you guys remember that, in the jail cells, had to go to a very vulnerable place, which you don't necessarily do with a lot of cartoon characters. But to access that, I had to tap into stuff that didn't feel good. It actually hurt to bring up memories of pain and loss to get to that emotional point that it really played well in the movie. And that was a turning point. That was a defining moment in my life. Compounded by the fact that after Bebop finally started becoming popular, it led to so many other things in my career. Megas XLR was because of that. Toonami was because of that. Yeah. I found out that Legend of Korra was because of that. And my relationship with Logic now is partially because of Cowboy Bebop. So, and the best part of all is that the lady who directed Cowboy Bebop, the voice direction for it, and played Julia in the show, my love interest, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, 20 years after we recorded this project, we've been friends for all these years, is now my fiance in real life.